In this video we'll be going over we'll be going over passing a list to a method, but before that we'll just talk about we'll be going over a quick for each loop, so just how to use a for each loop to index a list. So once again we can have a list up here as a field. So we can say list of type string, for example, string str list points to new list of type string. And here we can say, for example, str list.add, so we'll use the add method. Why is it spacing out? Stuff like that for me. Okay, so we have add here. Why is it? Oops, sorry, let's just go str list.add. No, can't add anything there. Let's try the constructor here, so we'll say str list.add. We'll add, so yeah, so I guess you can't add elements in the field, so here we'll just go to the constructor. So here we'll say that we want to add, for example, so we want to add some grapes, and then after that we can add some oranges, we can add some mangoes like that. Forgot how to spell mangoes. And then here we'll have we just have like one more thing here, so we could have just have plums. And then below, actually sorry, we can't add them all together. So we'll have to add them one by one. So here we'll say str list.add oranges. Then here we'll say str list.add, we'll add, what do you say, mangoes. After that we'll say str list.add, we'll add some plums. Okay, so now we can use a for each loop to index all the elements. So we have in index 0 grapes, in index 1 we have oranges, in index 2 we have mangoes, index 3 we have plums. So here we can say for each, we could say string str in str list. Then we can say that we want to, for example, messagebox.show. I want to messagebox.show str, because remember str is going to point to each value, so it's a little bit different. Str doesn't increment like a normal for loop. Str is actually just going to point directly to the index. So for iteration 0, you have to count the iterations yourself. If you're going to step through, or you'll just have to step through it yourself. You'll have to know that first str is going to point to index 0. So a message box should show up that says grapes, and then for the second iteration, str should point to oranges, and the message box will pop up and say oranges, and that'll happen for the rest of the indexes for index 2 and 3 as well. Okay, so now we'll talk about passing a list to a method. So sometimes you'll want to write a method that accepts a list as an argument and perform an operation on the list. So we'll just do an example of that. So it's pretty similar to arrays, except you just pass in angular brackets instead. So we'll do that below here. We'll say, for example, we have a private void method. We'll just call it display list, or we could say show list. So here we could say that it takes a list parameter of type string, and it's just, you could call it just list, or you could name it the same. You could say that it takes a list, or you should be able to say that it takes, for example, str list. which they'll be different. So it's not the exact same thing. I think there might be a warning telling us that the names are the same. So we can try that here. So we can say message box dot show. So once again, actually in this method itself, so private void show list takes parameter list of type string list or str list. Then we can have another for each loop here, so we can say for each loop str val, sorry, we could say string val in str list. Then we can say here message box dot show, and that we want to show basically val. Whoops. Or we could say string str in list, and then we want to show str. And remember that if this list was an int type or a double type, or for example like a decimal or some other kind of type, you'd want to cast it here, for example .toString. But in this case, you don't really need to do that because it's already a string. So either that or this should work. But in this case, we already have it as a string, so you don't need to do that. Okay, so there's an extra semicolon up there. So we could just pretty much you could just do that and call it, and it would work. So when you call a method and pass a list of type string object as an argument, you simply pass a variable that references a list. So for example, you could just pass it a list here. So we could take this loop out. So for example here, we could just say that we want to call show list. So we want to show list here, and then we could pass in, for example, str list. That should work. So we'll just run that to see what happens here. So let's just give that a sec. Sorry. So it's just passing this list into this method, recalling the method and passing the argument str list. So therefore, it should show us 4 message or dialog boxes, and then we'll just click OK to get to the next one. It should start at index 0. So it shows me grapes, oranges, mangoes, and plums, and then the form, and then I closed it. So you can also remove an item from a list. So we can do that, for example. Actually, we might do that in the next video. Okay, that's alright. So then we could just do that here. I'm probably gonna forget because I'm like splitting this in 2, so I might forget the name of that. Hopefully not. Okay, so here we'll say that we have a list already. Actually, we can go for another list. We can use an do we already use an initialization list? No, we didn't. We use the add method here to add the values. So once again, what happened there? You can use another. So there's another way to add. You can add values to a list. You could use an initialization list. So here, for example, we can say private list of type string. We could go with str list 2. Points a new list of type string. instead of doing the semicolon, we'll open a set of curly braces, and then here, for example, we could just pass in different strings here. We could pass it some more fruit, for example, so we can say like cherries. We could say, for example, strawberries. We could say that we have blackberries. Wow, so just three items, or just three elements or items, and the list is fine. So this time we used an initialization list to pretty much just instantiate the list. Oops, I forgot the ending angular bracket there. Okay, so then now, so we can remove an item from a list using a method. So here we could just say, so we can call our list here, we can access our list in the constructor. So we can say strList dot remove so we can say dot remove. So I think there's remove and remove at. So remove at will be an index. Remove, I think it just removes the item. You can try it. You can try different ways. You can try different methods that you want. So for example, here we're saying that we're removing, I believe, grapes because we're accessing index 0. And here, for example, we can say messagebox.show. We can say that we can pass a string here. We could say that we removed index 0 from strList. I think we call this strList2. So here we'll say strList2.remove index 0, and then we'll say that we removed index 0 from strList2. You can loop through and pass, you can loop through and check the elements again if you want. So basically, there's another way to, actually sorry, so let me just recap there. So we use the remove at method. So let's just write a note here. Did I say remove? Okay, so this should be remove at index. Okay, so here, so remove, so the remove at method removes an item from a certain index. For example here, then we could say strList2.remove. So we could remove, for example, a string, and we could say that we want to remove the string. For example, strawberries. So we'd pass it the element itself, and it's going to check. It should check if they're the same. So I believe it's the first index that's found with the element, but just be careful with that. If you have like more than one of the same element in the same list. So you can also check, basically, you can check so you can basically just use, you can check that an item's in a list using the remove method. That's one way to do it. You can say basically, okay, so you could say, for example here, so here you could say, for example, if strList2.remove, if not, strList.remove So basically, if it does not remove the element or the string strawberries, then that means if it can't remove it, then it basically actually it might remove all the occurrences. So just double check. You can check the docs for that exact fact, but if you just want to remove one, if you know you only have one element in the list and you're checking to see if that's in the list with the remove method, then here you could say that if it doesn't find the item, then you could say that the element was not found in list str list 2. So you could write like an error message or something. So for example here, you can also remove all the elements from the list using the clear method. So you could say, for example, strlist2.clear, and that will remove all the items or elements from the list. So in the next video, we'll be continuing with list operations. So we have a few more to do. So thanks for watching, guys. If you guys liked the video, you can like and subscribe to support the channel for more programming and investing tutorials. In the next video, we'll be inserting an item and continuing with list methods, such as searching for an item in a list. And then we'll be doing a lab. So thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.